I called the gang together because I have a very selfish topic today, and I wanted to talk about Illini Latigo leather because I just released a new product in that article. I think it might be one of the least appreciated and maybe lesser known leathers that you do that is of great quality. So I don't know if I'm putting it just like a little too aggressively there. But I think Illini Latigo is incredible. Super, super grainy. Maybe the one of the more intense grain bovine things that you do. Very dense, firm. You see it on a lot of belts and harnesses and things like that, but you've done it in multiple weights. I'm buying it in the 9 to 10 ounce, but I know you buy it in, or you make it in different weights. Well, I guess the first thing is maybe Nick or Skip, you want to pick either one of you. Maybe you could describe what you think Illini Latigo looks like, feels like. What is it?
Take it away, Skip.
Oh, sure. The buck stops here. I mean, the design of it in the beginning was you go back, and there's always a little bit of a history lesson that goes with it. I mean, it's as a Latigo leathers in general have been around for a really long time, and the original Latigos actually were alum-tan, and they were used for saddle strings. But as it evolved, they became more and more commonly combination tan leathers, and that was chrome tan and a heavy vegetable retan, and the bulk of them were fat liquored. And then there were some that were also stuffed, and there are some Latigos today from the veg guys. So it's become a pretty broad category.
I heard that the word Latigo means whip in Spanish or something like that. Somebody was telling me that.
Maybe I don't. Yeah, I'd have to
like Indiana Jones whip.
Yeah, I'd have to double back on that one and check that. I don't really know. I mean, dating back to when I came into the business, which was in 1978, the Latigo leathers were hugely popular at that point, and in the footwear trade, some shoes, and a lot of cowboy boots. And at that time, the color of choice was yellow, and it was really kind of a fairly bright yellow. And then people were hand staining it, and they used different tones. You got one tone if you used reds and oranges, and another one if you used blacks. And there were all kinds of things where people were crushing the leather and then swabbing it on to get different effects on it. And so one of the big makers of the leather at that point was a California tannery by the name of Poach and Peterson. And it was popular enough where there was no way that Poach could make enough. And so there were multiple others of us that got into that with our own versions of Latigo. And our Latigo at that time was quite different than the Illini. It was a fat liquid leather, which we still do some of today. But it tended to be a little mellower. And then we did some other mellower versions because, early days for me, there was a big run in the clog business. And that tannage lends itself really well to a lower pull-up than from Excel, for example, but really nice, round, mellow. And as you guys have used it in some of the things, it also lends itself to some pretty vivid colors. And people have done that back and forth. I mean, we did sandwich dyed and we did visage, which was contrast color tops. But the Poach and Peterson Latigo at the time was a stuffed leather. And at the time, it was sort of considered the gold standard of what was there. And, the fashion changed somewhat and other people got into it. And then at some point, probably too soon for the quality of company that they were, Poach went out of business. And those formulations were actually bought by Saul's Leather, also out in California. And Saul's in Santa Cruz. And they stayed around for quite a bit longer after that, but they also eventually left the business. Our response to that was we were aware that was a stuffed Latigo. And so very much like our Chrome Excel and doing a true hot stuffing, we're taking that leather and taking it out of the mill after it's pre-tanning and dyeing and then we're stuffing it. And the direct difference between that and Chrome Excel is the balance of the oils, greases, fats, and waxes in Chrome Excel is skewed much more heavily towards oils and greases, and in the Illini, it's much more heavily skewed towards harder waxes, and that's what gives you that density. It embosses great. For people doing leather crafts, it lasers, it stamps. It's super durable. I've got some sort of slabs of it that I use here at home, and I put like coasters and pots on it. I mean, it's impervious. The critique for certain people is it's particularly when it starts out, it's really firm.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that. So, I got the belt here, and
Yeah.
I've been wearing it. This is my observation on the Illini. Visually, it's actually not it's kind of bright, but it's not like mirror shine. It's very, very grainy. I think because you dry it, how you dry it in the toggling method.
It's toggled. Yep.
But I've been wearing this all day, so it's been heating up. But that's the
Yep.
observation is when I don't wear the belt like at night and come back in the morning, it's way firmer. Like it won't drape like this. But since I've been wearing it, it wants to crease. So for me on a belt or like anything that you're gonna wear that will heat up, I find it to be tremendously comfortable and then super stout as well. So very like dense and full.
It's very dense.
But kind of like it's a tough one because it's also really flexible too at the same time, where it's not shattery when you move it either. Like it's firm and move. It's very interesting. I really like the Illini.
Yeah, the Latigo family is interesting because you're using the word mellow, which just means soft. So there's like the Latigo family. There's like a gigantic range from like mellow, like you were saying, like something that's mellow, and then we oil it, and that's soft, and like I wouldn't say it drapes, but it's something that would that you can form and it feels soft. And then the other end of the spectrum would be Illini with all those hard waxes, where it's like you could cut it and conceivably use it as floor tiles if it's thick enough. I mean, it's like especially when it's cold like that, like it's super dense, and we can do it in 12 ounce, or it's very beefy and very, very robust. Yeah.
You guys should sell to a flooring company. I think legitimately would be an awesome floor.
I mean, just to fill in a little bit there, I mean, we did for a time too. I mean, if you make it in 3 ounce and you mill it, you can mill it with a milling wax, and it actually will, regular fat liquor Latigo will actually get fairly drapey. The Illini is not inclined towards that. I mean, the dirty trick, which you can edit out later if you want, was the stuff when you go to package this stuff to ship it, it's a beast. I mean, you take that 9 to 10 or heavier to 10 to 12. I mean, you roll those things up, and where even with football you might get 5 sides to a bundle. This stuff, it's one. You're rolling up one at a time.
That's a weapon.
And if I want to play a dirty trick on you, what I'll do with it is I can heat it up, and it rolls so easy. And then when it cools down, you will not get it unrolled.
Yeah.
It is not. It's like a coiled spring. It's not going to want to unroll.
So was the Saul stuff and the Poach and Peterson?
Poach and Peterson.
Were those also hot stuffed?
They were. Yes, they were.
Nice.
But not quite as firm.
Yeah. And you were telling me a story that I really wanted to capture. Part of the reason we had you on the podcast here is to tell some of that story, because I think you were telling me they were making a lot of stuff for Coach, and it was such a large part of their business, and then Coach went away, and maybe you tell that story again.
Well, but that's a tough one, because I don't know all the particulars, and we know the Luzin family a little bit. I mean, they were on board ground floor when Coach exploded, and Coach got so big that no one person could supply him, and they got a little, from the outside perspective, a little top heavy in the amount of their business that Coach constituted. When the fashion changed, for nobody's fault. I mean, it was a huge adjustment, and that tannery property was beautiful property in Santa Cruz. I mean, it was a tough one. But yeah, that was a completely different. So Saul's by that time though they had bought the Poach and Peterson formula, which a lot of the belt guys were using, and that was the stuff. And it's a small enough trade that it was fairly common knowledge that one of the waxes that gets used to make it firm like that is a paraffin or some form of it.
Is that what Coach was making? Was belts? Or
No,
straps.
Coach was using leather from them for bags, and the classic leather was much more like a very mellow baseball glove leather. So it was a completely separate article.
Okay.
I mean, they were two. That was two different.
Okay, so you had mentioned that there was and how you came up with the name Illini Latigo. You mentioned that there was a California analog, right. And that was not the Coach leather necessarily.
No, it was not. It was not the Coach leather. There was Coach Classic, which was theirs, but California Latigo was the Saul's version of the Poach and Peterson. Because there was that period of time. It's a piece of context, and I was trying to rack my brains a little bit. There were some really pretty sizable and good tanneries in California as recently as when I started. I mean, off the top of my head, I came up with 7, and
wow.
I'll insult somebody because I'll miss somebody because they're basically all gone now. But there were some big old sort of family, being Poach and Peterson, and then Saul's, which was 1880s, and Legale Tanning in San Francisco, and Vernon Leather, and Sierra Pine, and Calnap, and Manasseh Block. And at various times, I mean, those guys, there was so much more competition because so much more leather used here came from here. But I can remember leathers from each of those guys that were like really nice leathers. And we weren't in the Illini type because that part of the segment of the market was being really well serviced by these guys. So our Latigo had its own fit because it was slightly different and it was available. And Chrome Excel was never something that they did. But the Illini was, that and its cousins per se had sort of very particular followings and clientele, including in another segment of business that's largely gone away in pet products. And there was a tremendous business done in leashes and collars. Most of the harness business was done by the traditional veg tanners, because as there is a percentage of humans that have a slight reaction to chrome tanned leather, horses did too. And the way to get around it was to just use veg leathers.
How many? It's when you mentioned all those California tanneries, the tangent here. How many of those are still around?
0.
Yeah,
we were texting before.
90s.
We were texting before because I was like, how different is the industry now? Just look at California. Like, can you imagine like going to California? Like, I'm going to build a tannery and start tanning leather in California. Like, you wouldn't even be able to break ground. Like, they wouldn't even.
Yeah. And there were 7 tanneries in Chicago when I started. And now it's us.
I'm so tempted to dive into the politics of the current tariff stuff. Maybe we should avoid it, but do you think,
That's probably another conversation because it's fascinating. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, the subtext for that one is what makes tanneries go away. And sort of what are the watershed moments that tanneries arrive at that fork in the road, and is this one of those events that drives other people out?
Yeah, it's a regulation and labor costs and material costs.
I mean, it's that one's unavoidably political, and
so
it's not just a leather. It's not just a leather thing. I mean, it doesn't. That's one of those things that the frustrating thing is that your business is hard enough without those externalities, and the frustration for both of us, because relative to our businesses, scope-wise, we're about the same to the leather industry as you guys are to the wallet industry.
We're way
smaller. The cavalry is not coming to rescue us.
No,
we're not big. We're not big enough that they want to save us from the big bad world. And so you get sort of whipsawed by somebody's larger agenda.
I've actually been hearing that the leather accessories world, wallets and belts, is like a $200 billion world. So we're not even in the radar.
Well, but the same. I mean, but think about, in terms of the scope of leather tanners when you add in all the upholstery guys. I mean, we're a rounding error.
Right.
We're an afterthought, and it's nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. We've worked at that. There's part of us where it's you, once you've decided you're not for everybody, then that leads you to some other decisions.
Well, let me get us back on the rails here because
Yeah, please.
I find the Illini to be tremendously. I've always liked it,
Mhm.
but my experience at the tanner was just seeing it in sheets, and I didn't see it in many products. Even like last 20 years, I haven't seen a ton of it. Until now.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think part of what you're doing, is in, until you acquaint people with the differences, it's not always so easy to differentiate why it's not okay to use something else. I mean, the competition in a lot of cases is people using a cheaper product, and you can use, a corrected grain, impregnated belt leather that's firm and will act and look really nice in the beginning, and then as it wears, its prime is fairly short, and then it starts to break down. So in the absence of a consumer that's looking for the things that this leather can do, I mean, some of the nicest bags that I saw too. I mean, years ago, right when Nick was starting with us, I mean, our friend Emil Irwin was making some of these bags out of this leather, and they were magnificent.
Emil did Illini bags.
Mm-hmm.
He double in bags with a all Illini trimming and straps. They were cool.
I thought I had one that was a line.
Was it? I'm not remembering.
I mean, you needed to be, the mountain from Game of Thrones to carry it around, but I mean, it was a beast, but it was awesome. I mean, and as it broke in, it was really awesome.
Yeah.
So and he wanted it really heavy. We can make it. It doesn't have to be 10 ounce.
Yeah, it's a good. We talk about this, or I've talked about it a bunch of times, where there are certain products when you buy them, when they come off the shelf, like that's the best they're going to look. Like it's day one is the best, and then it's all that you're going downhill from there. And there's a lot of stuff in the leather world where it's the opposite, where I think it's the opposite, where it comes off the shelf and like it looks good, it looks new, but it's only, or maybe there's like a little, depending on your opinion, it might dip down a little bit, like as you're going through like the patina process, but then it's like it just keeps getting better and better and better. The more you use it, the more you wear it, and Illini is like a really good sort of example of that.
Mm-hmm.
So just too much. You feel like the appearance of this Illini is a little bit too commodified. Is that what I'm hearing? Maybe not the actual Illini, but just the look.
Is that what I'm saying?
I think that's what Skip might have been saying.
No, I mean, I think until you get someone to look at that next to what I was describing, not everybody will have seen enough of it to differentiate it. When you see it next to what I'm talking about, it's easy to pick, but because it hasn't been so out there and available, it just isn't. I mean, that's the kind of belt. That belt in black, that could be your everyday belt for literally years.
Guess what we named it? It's an everyday belt.
Right. Well, it's that. I mean, one of the things that we've shared as companies is, you've created a product there, which is what we aim to always be, that people will get sick of before they wear it out. I mean, you're going to want a new one, but it's not going to be because it wore out or broke. It's going to be because you'd like to have something a little different every now and then. I mean, you can wear that thing.
Well, speaking of which, you told me you have an Illini belt that you purposefully backboarded and created that puckered kind of grain.
Yep.
I guess that's a look into the future of it, right?
Yeah, so I'll bring it in so you can take a picture of it. I mean, it looks great.
What color is it?
It's burgundy.
Yeah, I would love to take a picture of that.
It feels great. I mean, and as you say, I mean, This is one of those leathers also that as you wear it, it will form to you that sort of particular curve that we all add to a belt at some point or another. But it really, as it warms up, it really wants to mold to you.
Right. So when you guys started making this based off the California Latigo,
Mm-hmm.
it was for strapping, like
For
what?
belts, yeah.
For belts.
Mhm.
Okay. Huh. I don't know. I
I
guess
mean,
I'm
again,
surprised. I'm surprised I don't see more of it. Is
I mean, again,
where
it
I'm
was,
at.
it was another one that sort of had its fashion, and then it kind of faded over the top. The Latigos and the Chrome Excels, and then some of the other developments in recent years have taken the place of these things. But there were sort of these cycles that traded themselves in and out. I mean, there were, you go back years, and other people certainly made pull-up leathers. But, for some of the bigger ones, everything had to be done in such huge quantities. When it wasn't tens of thousands of feet, they moved on. Well, we can scale that up and scale it down in this leather and in most of our leathers. You have looks that sort of cycle through as styles and people that discover something, and then you get shoe companies or belt companies that reintroduce it, and it finds a new audience. I mean, this for that is, this it's a very utilitarian belt,
Right.
and but it also, in this day and age when things are more casual, you can dress it up or dress it down. It's not like it's going to look all raggy and shaggy and you're not going to be able to wear it with something nice. I mean, and it's another leather with minimal care. You can bring it back and it'll look great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess one of the drawbacks that we came across when we had the concept to do the Illini belt was the color range that's available. Because I asked Dan, I was like, I really would like to get a Illini in the color of natural chrome excel. He's like, yeah, it kind of doesn't get close to that.
It doesn't pull up. So I mean, you can see. I mean, you can see it. I mean, some of it's running. We've faced some of our manufacturing challenges on that, where some of it's really beautiful, but it's really blotchy. Also, so that's the thing. I mean, that's.
Why do you think it gets blotchy?
Well, I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 different potential reasons, and maybe any one of a number of them. I mean, if they don't run it properly, then stuffing and get it really taken up, things will lay up. We've had cases where we toggle it, and for whatever reason we get the temperature in the toggle up just short of the surface of the sun, and then leave it in there for a while, and those greases are fairly mobile, and they just want to slide around all over the place. So
Go into that a little bit more, because I know what you're talking about, but maybe you could describe what's happening.
well, so our leathers, there's 4 basic drying methods that you will encounter at our tannery. The simplest being air drying, where you just hang it up and let it dry and take as long as you can, which is, that's Chrome Excel. Chrome Excel is soft enough that you can lay it back flat. If you did that with a Illini, it would curl up and you would just have such a beast trying to get it to lay flat for you again. You just don't even do that. Pasting has its own challenges. It's great for certain leathers for this because the wax is hard enough. You'll effectively do some boarding of the leather, just stripping it off of a pasting frame. And to make it stick, you're going to have to use so much paste that to wash the paste is going to be a real challenge. So we toggle this and, for example, baseball glove leather, because we're actually looking for that high grain. You can, with glove type leathers, not ours the way we do it, you can add yield to it because you can pull it. Our big challenge with toggling this is pretty tough to get toggles that hold heavy leather. If you get any shrinkage, it just pops them right out. But you get that very high grain, and those stuffing blends, those blends are fairly mobile at relatively low temperatures. And so if you get it really hot, then in the leather that's drying, that leather will continue to move with the help of gravity towards whatever's towards the bottom, and not always uniformly. So you're making these sort of and they get kind of crispy looking. I mean, it's a really, we've got some now you should see sometime. because I'm going to have them do something clear. They're so cool with all that modeling on it. But could I reproduce it? I'm not sure.
That's a tough one.
Just don't know.
I happen to think maybe it's because I'm too deep on it, but I really liked, just as a general sense or general statement, both ways you dry Latigo and Illini Latigo. But I've always really liked that raised, like it's very grainy. I'm sure certain my camera here is going to do nothing to show it, but it's super raised grain. And then on the flip side, I actually really like the compacted pasted grain. Like those are my two. I think I just like the extremes of like the standard Latigo that you do, as well as like a toggled.
I think the drying is an interesting distinction. So the drying methods differ in the appearance that they give because it's how is the grain drying. So in air drying and in toggling, there's nothing against the grain. So as the leather shrinks a little bit, it sort of puckers up and things get taller. Where the other methods, which are vacuum drying and pasting, the grain is against steel and glass, respectively. So as it dries, there's not really any appreciable shrinkage for the purpose of this conversation, but also the grain there's nowhere for it to go, so it just ends up staying very flat. So the appearance, you still get all the character is still there, like all of the aesthetics are still there, but you don't get that raised texture, and I think that's a big distinction point on leathers that are so naked, like the Illini.
I think drying is an underrated process. I don't think people appreciate how much of an effect that has for multiple reasons: the yield and the appearance, all of it. The stretch, which by the way, this doesn't seem to want to stretch at all. The Illini.
The bulk of leathers you'll encounter out there in the world are either toggled or back dried. It's a pretty mechanized way of drying, and toggling in particular with the big modern toggle dryers add to the yield tremendously. I mean, because thinner, softer leathers, like the bulk of your upholstery leather is toggled because they can really stretch it. So
let me sign your checkbook. Why not buy a big toggler like that?
I don't do enough toggle leather. But
you could. It's nice. I like it.
Yeah, I can do plenty. How much more do you want?
Well, those big machines, they have they're like stretchers. It's not just the toggling. It's like a big, you put it on there and then the whole thing sort of stretches and pulls it out and then it dries it and quickly, and they're huge.
The auto togglers, the new ones are for scale for UFO are bigger than our pasting unit.
Really?
And they go on these frames. Well, and taller for those bigger hides.
Because they're whole hide, yeah. So it's like,
sheesh,
ginormous.
And so those they're halves that the hides go on, and there's some play in them, and then right before it goes in, with your toggle everything, you put a little bit of pressure on them, and right before it goes in, the machine actually drives wedges in on the corner and gives it a real pull. So where we with a really heavy steer, with this toggle for the Illini, we might get 44 feet out of a hide, maybe 45. The upholstery guys, if they get anything less than 50, they're not happy. They're looking for 55 to 60. Now, completely different weights and tannages, but those units are designed to do things like that. The same thing with garments. I mean, they want, if you're cutting sofas and car seats, those main cuts are huge. So you need that big place to start from. You change the character of the leather and the tannages are completely different.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's end it on this question. I'm sure I know a lot of the audience is really into footwear.
Yep.
Have there been Illini boots, shoes, ought there not to be, or should there be?
I'm not aware of. I'm sure there are a few that I don't remember. It would be a tough leather to manufacture. I mean, we could make it in a lighter weight, and it would be really cool to see how it did it. When they're new, I mean, they're going they're going to be pretty stout, pretty firm. We've done a version which we could explore that's a little mellower. You just tweak that stuffing blend a little bit. I mean, it would be great, but there are sort of so many other choices out there. It's never sort of risen to the top there. I mean, it lends itself, because it wants to sort of pack itself and plump to those things that you want, which are heavier applications. So I don't think it's. I don't know. I mean, I think once you got them broken in, I think they'd be great. But I think that would really make you work for it.
What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that if we were to decide that was a look that we wanted to do on the footwear side of things, we would have to adjust the wax. We could leave most of the things the same and have to adjust the wax blend so that it wasn't.
I think it kind of defeats the purpose, because that wax, like I said, as you wear it, it softens up and becomes super comfortable. But when it's cold or room temperature, it's pretty firm.
Yeah,
but you've seen some of the wash. Once we do the heated tumble, I mean, it does soften. I mean, the grain appearance is radically different, but it will soften. And which you'll see with this belt I'll show you, once it's soft, it's really nice.
Okay. Well, Illini Latigo, best to stick with belts, harnesses, shoulder straps, kind of things.
I think if you want something in that realm, sort of a Chrome Pack and Woolly Chrome XL, while completely different, sort of give you a similar sort of feel of like grainy beefiness, for the lack of a better description. So I would look, as existing products, I would look at those. Like if you're like, oh, I really want something that's kind of like that's indestructible and like really robust. I think that those, or the Spokane, which I guess would be maybe a little bit less robust than what I just mentioned, but there are options.
Spokane is new to me. Give me 2 sentences about that. What is it?
That's like Nick's Boots is using that. John and I just talked to them on their podcast a couple weeks ago. That's like a sort of more approachable version of Chrome Pack that has a vegetable reach hinge and different extract blend, so it doesn't have that chrome streak anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it as greasy as Chrome Pack Classic?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
It's not. It's like how can we take Chrome Pack and just make it a little bit more approachable, so it's not just like a logging boot leather. It's like something you could wear. You could wear it still because it's still beefy, but you could also wear it, sort of on the more I don't like the word, but lifestyle side of things.
That's awesome. That's a great idea. All right. Well,
heavier Chrome Pack. Just to break it one more time. The issue with that in footwear was always break. But if you didn't care about that, I mean, we ran that in 5.5 to 6 for Dexter in large quantities for about 15 years, and it made great shoes. It was not a dressy shoe, but again, it was a shoe you couldn't kill.
Got it. All right, guys. Well, I think Nick and I want to do another recording after this, and I would also like to go to sleep before midnight. So,
okie doke.
Okay, thanks, Dad.
Thank you,
See
Skip.
y'all.
That's
Thanks,
nice
everybody.
of you to share the history of
Take
the world
care.
with us.
Have a good night.
See you tomorrow.
See ya.